Well, good morning, everybody. This is Pat Mesiti, and today's a bit of an SOS to the nation before Saturday. I hadn't intended to come out and do any rants or any talks, but what happened yesterday out of one article that appeared in Spectator magazine simply caused the Prime Minister of our nation to do a massive, kind of please explain, which he actually didn't do. Now, before we get started today, I want to make a couple of statements. I've got a few spammers out there that go in here and start spamming Telegram groups. What I need you to do, folks, that is not us. Anyone that does that, I need you to report them immediately and ignore them. Block and delete. They are spammers, scammers, and there to do a lot of damage. So please be aware of that. If you see any of that, join our Telegram chat, that is not me. I don't care who they are, all right? It's not me. It's not sanctioned. Secondly, could I encourage you all, and I'll get my team, Chris, to put up there. We need you to follow us on Instagram. Obviously, we've been shadow banned over there. So we need you guys to get on board and follow us directly. So there's just a couple of things. Now, today, I'm going to be bringing in the mystery journalist, and later on, we're going to bring in Senator Malcolm Roberts. But this Geneva Global Pandemic Treaty is nothing more but an attack on our sovereignty. It is evil. I believe it's part of the New World Order. The agenda is simply barbaric. Why on earth our Prime Minister, and let me say this, Albanese and the Greens are in cahoots with these people? There's only one answer. They're part of this New World Order, New World Agenda. I believe this thing is from the pit of hell itself. And that's the nice stuff I could say about it. You know, slush funds that have been allocated for all this nonsense, we didn't sign up for that. To me, this is a threat to democracy. It's a slap in the face of Australians. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to play you the clips of what Albo and Scott Morrison say. These guys are both singing from the same hymnal. Actually, I wouldn't call it a hymnal. I'd call it a book of evil. But let's run the clips. I want you to hear what both of these buffoons, that's all I call them. And please, some of you, don't go telling me, oh, it's disrespectful calling the Prime Minister a buffoon. Well, Jesus called Herod a fox. So I'm entitled to call him a buffoon, especially when he's putting our country, I believe, in jeopardy of our sovereignty. Let's run the clip. Let's run the first clip, guys.
Thursday. John? The World Health Organisation, Mr Albanese, next week World Health Organisation is meeting, and on the agenda is clearly the formulation of what's called a pandemic treaty, which will give the WHO greater control in how they dictate other countries manage pandemics. Would you sign up to such a treaty?
What we have said is that we need clearly to strengthen the WHO and the way that it operates. One of our three pillars of our foreign policy is our alliance with the United States, engagement in the region, and support for multilateral forums. Today, one of the things that we're about as well, and today's announcement, is about the response to the pandemic. That's why we're announcing today our support for medical manufacturing. Clearly, one of the lessons of the pandemic is that we weren't self-reliant enough.
Now, here on the one hand, you got Albo, two-way Albo, talking about being self-reliant. Then he goes on and says we've got to strengthen who? What are you talking about? And getting involved in multilateral agreements. Let me just say this. This guy's already got his bag packed, ready to leave on Monday or whatever, wants to get sworn in on Sunday, hasn't won the election yet, wants to get sworn in and leave with a Penny Wong and go overseas to Japan for some global climate nonsense rubbish. Let me just say this. This is absolutely disgusting. But I want you to have a listen to what Scott Morrison said just a few days ago.
The World Health Organisation meets on May 22, and on the agenda is a potential pandemic treaty which would allow the WHO to direct countries in how they control pandemics. Would you consider signing up to that and handing over any controls to the organisation?
I have always been supportive right from the outset and was criticised heavily, I stress, heavily, mocked in fact by the Labor Party for saying the WHO should have those powers and those authorities to be able to go and deal with pandemic situations, because we all know what happened at the start of this pandemic. The problem is we don't know what happened at the start of this pandemic, and I was the one calling to ensure that we had an independent process to understand what happened so it couldn't be repeated. So I have been in the vanguard of those moves internationally to ensure that there is greater protection for world health, to ensure that those World Health authorities can come and understand what's going on and be able to assist countries to be able to prevent the spread and outbreak of major infectious diseases. Now, we'll look at the text of all of that, but we have been amongst the countries that have been positive about these sorts of changes. Have to look closely at what the detail is in these things, as you always must. But the idea that countries can just say, no, you can't come in and have a look at a pandemic that's about to break out and actually affect the public health and the economy of the entire world, as we saw with this pandemic, then I think it's only sensible that that's an area of international cooperation that is very, very important, and I've been consistent on that. And remember, the Labor Party mocked me for saying that that was a good idea.
Now, folks, I want to break this down. I'm going to show one more clip, then I'm going to bring in our guests. Number one, an independent process. Where the hell did he get the concept that the WHO is independent? Firstly, they're funded by Bill Gates. Secondly, Tedros is in bed with China. Is he kidding me? The next thing is, he says that he had incredible support and people rallying against him. Well, it wasn't just Labor, it was all of us that were not happy with. And in light of the fact that he just said, well, we didn't know what was going on, that's nonsense. That is absolute nonsense. Now, a few days ago, that clip, he said he's fully supportive of making those changes. Well, my special guest yesterday put out an article on Spectator magazine and it went nuts. ScoMo got slammed. Now, I want you to listen to his backflip yesterday. I want you to listen to this radio interview that was sent to me last night. This is why we're here today. Just remember, Albo, Greens, Liberal, any of you that are daft enough to vote for these three stooges and the Teals, I've got to add, you are destroying this country's sovereignty. Australia has fallen, if it hasn't already. Let me play you the radio clip in response to the Spectator magazine article, and then I'm going to bring our special guest on. Here it is.
I'm speaking with the Prime Minister. Now, PM, there's this bizarre report in the Spectator that Australia's about to sign a World Health Organisation global pandemic treaty, which would grant the WHO absolute control over the health choices of Australian citizens. Is that fair dinkum?
No, it's complete rubbish, and we would never sign anything like that. I would never sign anything like that. That is not something the Australian government would do, and to my knowledge, there's not even that is not even occurring or even being considered next week.
So where's that come from, do you think?
I've got no idea, Jim, but I do know it's doing the rounds, and it's being pushed around by the United Australia Party and a number of others, and it's complete and utter rubbish. Now, we're the government that when the UN tried to make us sign up to rules on immigration and things like that, I said no way, and turned it off. When they tried to make us send money from Australia over to the United Nations to go into their climate change funds to spread around from the United Nations, I said, no way.
Well, let me tell you, it wasn't the UAP, it wasn't One Nation, and he does know where it comes from. It comes from the Australian people, and it comes from the fact that he supports this bill. Now, my guest from Spectator magazine, Ellie Alexandra Marshall, somebody set the cat among the pigeons yesterday, didn't they?
Well, it's not some bizarre report. It is a globally trending topic because Australia is one of nearly 200 countries that are set to sign up to this WHO pandemic treaty. Now, the Prime Minister has spoken on this not just once, but many times since last year when this thing was being dreamt up. And he should be across the detail. And the detail is quite simply that the WHO treaty seeks to usurp sovereign control over health. And it details at length and complains at length that the fact that countries can currently take bespoke approaches to pandemics and to health responses, the WHO sees that as a threat to global health. Now, of course, if you've been paying attention to the pandemic so far, the WHO already have the power to investigate pandemics in countries. That's part of their existing portfolio of powers. So what the Prime Minister said there, one of his comments that, oh, the WHO needs the power to investigate pandemics, they have that power. What happened in China is the WHO failed in its current basic role, which was to stop places like China performing gain-of-function research. And then when the virus escaped, it was the WHO that protected China, which was the source of the Wuhan flu. And they decided not to investigate China or not to close the borders because of political reasons. Because don't forget, the current head of the WHO, Tedros, had his campaign, his domestic political campaign in his own country supported and funded by China. And then he was appointed to the WHO basically after a very nasty election where China put him in charge of the WHO. So he is not an independent body, and he protected China politically. So the WHO failed in its current powers, and what this treaty seeks to do is give the WHO extended powers over every nation that signs it. And the problem with treaty is that a treaty usurps your parliamentary law. So the government can use the text of the treaty to implement things like mandatory vaccines, which is part of the WHO's current constitution, and that is what will become part of the treaty if signed. It also gives them enormous surveillance powers, which it is designed to use as part of the World Economic Forum's Digital Identity Bill, which you'll also note that Scott Morrison's government has in play and is signing us up to. So then part of that is a health pass, a required health pass, so that the WHO can surveil you as you move between countries. And also included in the WHO pandemic treaty is, of course, arbitrary quarantine and the ability for the WHO, without any documentation, to call pandemics and then initiate emergency procedures based upon these pandemics. So if Scott Morrison is saying that the WHO treaty doesn't involve sovereign risk, then he's either not read what he's signing and therefore should not be speaking on it, although I doubt he hasn't read it, or he has read it and he hasn't understood it, which, let's be frank, he's not the brightest button in the tin, or he has read it, he has understood it, and he doesn't want the Australian public to understand that politicians are going to be able to put all of the responsibility for a pandemic offshore. So instead of having to cop all the political fallout for their pandemic decisions, they could say, well, it's not us, it's the WHO that have asked us to do this. And the one thing I will finally say here at the end is that the WHO keeps saying that the biggest problem with this pandemic handling was that countries were allowed to take their own way out of the pandemic. Now, the biggest failing with this pandemic was the insistence on these unified approaches to health, many of which were wrong, that came out of the WHO. The WHO gave bad advice. They also gave contradictory advice. It was the countries like Sweden and the states like Florida that proved that there were other ways to this pandemic that may have been better than the WHO advice. Now, that will go. If we're under a pandemic treaty, there'll be no more test cases and no more diversity in approach to health. It'll be a one health solution, which is what they call it.
Ellie, I get confused. Don't we have a health minister that's supposed to be looking after all this stuff? Why the heck do we need somebody who knows nothing about our country, whose pockets are lined by the likes of Gates, who, by the way, not the most trustworthy, respected person in the world? Why is Australia and both Morrison, the Greens, and Albo so hell-bent on this globalisation agenda? What's your take on that?
Well, I've been asking for a long time, when is Scott Morrison going to present Greg Hunt, our federal health minister? Well, he still is currently, but he won't be for much longer. But Greg Hunt was in the World Economic Forum as the director of strategy. And so the World Economic Forum is caught up in the digital identity side of this, where they're using the health passes to tie into the WHO pandemic measures. Now, I want to know what role has Greg Hunt and his former role in the the WEF, have to do with convincing the Prime Minister that this whole globalised bureaucratic approach is a good thing? Because you can't tell me that his former life in amongst these bureaucracies hasn't had an impact, because he's been giving these big projects involved with health and digital identity to his former World Economic Forum mates, who were, of course, conducting things with the WHO. So these guys are all in bed with each other. They don't declare their former relationships properly. So the public have no idea that it's a mates rates kind of thing going on here. So with the Greg Hunt and the health department, just to clarify for those who don't know, the only reason we have a federal health department is because of the Spanish flu and the pandemic response that failed during those pandemics. They decided to centralize pandemic health. And all of the advice and the large reports they wrote on how to deal with a pandemic were ignored. They were completely ignored through COVID. What they did instead is they threw out our health advice that we'd given ourselves and did all the things that the WHO and things like people like China did, even though we had all of our experts had argued against that, saying that's a bad idea, not a good approach. So we didn't even take the advice that we had paid for and conducted over 50 years. We ignored our own advice. And look where it got us. These lockdowns, it was a disaster for sovereignty, it was a disaster for businesses, and it was a disaster for our liberties.
Ellie, I'm going to read a quote from the article that someone wrote yesterday. It was you, come on.
I am the online editor. I write flat white. So
well done. I love it. My phone was ringing hot yesterday. Let me read this excerpt. In relation to people saying, well, it's just like Victoria, you said, except Australia can't vote WHO out of power. As for Labor, they've laid down at the feet of the WHO, tummies up and paws in the air like dogs waiting for a rub. I love that line. The advertised pretext for a global health treaty is that the countries were wrongly allowed to take bespoke approaches to COVID. In particular, the rollouts, according to the WHO, this endangers the health of the whole planet. Do they really believe that nonsense?
Yes. And if you read all of their ridiculous press releases, they produce these huge long PDF files. They go in there and they chat about it in all these little short videos. They pose, this is their big idea, that this pandemic treaty is about resolving the inconvenience of statism, which is basically the idea that a state has independent sovereignty over public health. And they talk about specifically and in print the globalist future of health and how we need to take globalist approaches, and they call it the One Health approach. So they're not even trying to disguise that this WHO pandemic treaty is about taking away the sovereign rights of health choices from governments and centralizing them into the WHO, so that the WHO becomes, but also on top of that, they said they lament in their documents they want the WHO to have extended powers over not just your health department, but your agriculture department and your transit department, because, of course, infectious diseases in agriculture as well. They want to have control over those two departments to complete their One Health solution.
Look, I'm not a fan of Morrison at the moment, and I'm certainly not a fan of Albanese. This morning, he's saying now that he's ditching his costings. He's not going to announce them today. He's decided not to do that. As well, he's ditched the whole his media thing. But Albanese made a major blunder today talking about our borders being closed. Is this guy, honestly, Ellie, is this guy another Kevin Dud, except on steroids, in your opinion?
So as bad as Scott Morrison is, and he is bad, like, let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
Albanese is worse. I mean, he is a socialist. He loves the idea of hard socialism. He's not even pretending about that. So his idea, then, money, it grows on trees. Who needs to cost anything, right? He doesn't seem to care about what things cost, as long as it will, the promise of money and the promise of freebies will buy him vote. We know he's not serious because he announces things like the government will co-own your home. Gee, what could possibly go wrong with a scenario like that? He doesn't have any idea of what the unintended consequences are of his little promises, and I don't think he actually cares, so long as he can get a naive and desperate people to vote for him. But he's already discussed that he wants to renew the conversation on the pandemic measures, And we know that the Labor governments around the country and the states have been quietly ushering in additional powers. And so I think under Albanese, their primary motivation will be to reenact another pandemic, probably surrounding the flu, because they've been talking that up. And then on top of that, they're going to start taking away other liberties based upon their favourite topic of climate change.
Yeah. Well, we've got another special guest, and I'm going to ask the team to keep us all three on camera. Senator Malcolm Roberts, great to have you in at the last minute. And it's great to have Malcolm here. Can you hear us, Malcolm? There he is. And
I can, Pat.
Well, didn't Ellie set the cat among the pigeons yesterday, bringing Morrison out of his corner, and he ducked into the neutral corner, which is not neutral. Senator, you've been all over this as well. Give us your insight into the danger that this represents to our country.
Well, I missed your introduction then, Pat, of that point. Ellie always makes good points. If she opens her mouth, it's sense coming out of it, that's for sure, all the time, repeatedly, public, private. Now, there are two issues here, and people were lulled into a false sense of security, including us, because we only found out about the second issue, a separate issue, by late last week. The first issue is that the UN's World Health Organization is doing a review and coming up with a treaty with a timeline that extends in detail, publicly available, to a decision in 2024. Oh, good, nothing to see here. Go home, take it easy. We'll fight that when it comes. No. On Thursday, we found out, one of our staff found out, there's a second issue. The UN's, I'll read these notes, World Health Assembly, Pat, which will take place in Geneva on May 22 to 28, 2022. So May 22nd is Sunday, the day after our election. They will vote upon proposed amendments to the international health orders. And I don't know how much you've dealt with
Okay, looks like
Alexandra, but regulations, international health orders, mandatory and this is where the heinous regulations come in that restrict us.
Now,
can you hear me, Pat?
Well, you keep cutting in and out, Senator, so I don't know why it just stops, but maybe it's a bad area. But can I just talk about this?
Oh, no, Yeppoon's a good area.
Oh, Yeppoon's a good
area.
Yeah, it's a great area. It's a great area, it is. All right, now...
It's the signal.
It's a signal. All right, now that's true. Now, Ellie and Malcolm, this $10 billion per year preparedness fund with an additional $100 billion emergency fund, can we afford that?
Well, the epidemic preparedness, whatever, they're called CEPI. This has been going for a long time, and Australia's been throwing money into this foundation. It's basically funded primarily by Bill Gates, also by Wellbeing, and then by a consortium of nations, of which Australia is one. And these are the guys who pre-COVID, so before COVID, they were funding research for mRNA and RNA technology. And they were doing that for the WHO. So it was actually linked to the WHO in order to deal with what they call a disease X scenario that the WHO were trying to troubleshoot. And so when the pandemic COVID actually broke out, the first thing the WHO did was turn straight around to its friends over at CEPI and go, we'll have your product and we're going to pass emergency legislation, or at least get the world governments to pass emergency legislation to use this product that you already poured a fortune into. That's why they were pushing certain technologies, even though they weren't properly tested. Now, we have been pouring money into this because we started doing it a while ago. So it's almost like having to prop up your investment to keep it going. And we've also been guilted. It's a lot like climate change, where we get guilted into handing over money to pay for things for the third world. So CEPI's whole deal is making rich first world nations pay for their product, which they then hand out to third world customers. Now, we're not rich. We're in $1 trillion of debt almost, but we are still handing hundreds of millions of dollars to these people every single time.
Yeah. Do you know what I find amazing? And go ahead, Senator. Go ahead.
The issue of money is one thing. We cannot afford it. But the other issue, and the primary issue, is control. We cannot afford that at all, giving control of our sovereignty, control of our country, control over our citizens to a foreign unelected body. What's more, it's a corrupt, crooked, incompetent, dishonest body. That's been proven. And also remember that the World Health Organization is privately funded in large part. Privately funded. And CEPI...
Yeah.
Well, we say there,
line people's pockets, billionaires' pockets, and...
I was going to say you were dropping out, Malcolm, but what we can say is that CEPI is funded by the same people who fund the WHO, and they're basically passing pandemic legislation and laws, which then forces world governments to buy products from CEPI and the partners of CEPI. So they're basically leaning on world governments to sell products via coercion. That's definitely a corruption at the top level.
I had an interesting thing happen a week ago, and it's not on this scale. As you know, I run a business, and then I have my ministry stuff that I do as well. But last week, someone approached me from the United States about being involved in a certain business venture, and they wanted to make me the ambassador on the South Australia, New Zealand, South Pacific. And they offered me a huge amount of money to be their ambassador. When I looked at this organisation, and what shocked me was the amount of Christian leaders that were involved, it was based on the 17-point plan of the UN. And I thought to myself, how deep does this deception run among these circles? And I said, I called my mate up. I had 15 minutes before this meeting. I said, mate, I've just investigated this thing. This thing reeks of UN fingerprints all over it. I said, I don't want any part of it. Oh, but they're going to make you, they're going to help you make a lot of money. I said, I'm not for sale. Get this right. I don't do the 30 pieces of silver. And to me, when I look at this, I just think this thing reeks of the fingerprint of money, both to political parties, big pharma, and these organisations. Am I accurate in those assessments, or am I just deceived?
Completely accurate, Pat, completely accurate. This has been going on since well before 1944, the overall agenda. It's been going on since the late 1800s. However, the use of the UN was formed by these globalist predators to control people. It was formed in 1944. Dr. Everett from Australia represented us at the formation. We have had many, many interventions since then. Both the Liberal, Labor and Nationals, and now the Greens Party, have been selling us out. 1944 twice, 1953, 1975, 1983, 1992, 1996, 2007, 2013, 2015, 2020. Significant treaties, protocols, agreements, mandates that the UN has held over this country. We should have told them all to go to hell.
Absolutely.
This is not legal. Now, the UN has also, through various people, controlled church groups, and they pretend that the UN is a wonderful organization. As I said, it's crooked, corrupt, incompetent, dishonest. It is anti-human. The fundamental philosophy is anti-human. I can prove that. But what we've got to do is also understand they're aligned with many parallel groups like WWF, which is number one goal is to destroy the Australian coal industry, destroy the Australian beef industry. How the hell can the Nationals stand beside WWF and allow it to happen? Stand beside the UN and allow that to happen? The UN policies that the Nationals have adopted are destroying agriculture, destroying beef. And we're funding them to do this. And the same with Greenpeace. And many of the churches. They are pushing UN policy. WWF knows it. Greenpeace knows it. Are ignorant, and ignorance is bliss.
You know, one of the things that shocked me earlier this year was our Prime Minister being part of the World Economic Forum as their speaker, along with Xi Jinping over there in China, Bill Gates, and the rest of them. And, you know, if these guys are so blatant in what they're saying, I mean, they've got their nutty professor out there saying you can forget free will. That's something of the past. That's out of order. That's not going to happen anymore because we have a way to hack humans. But what intrigues me, and I want to quote something that Tedros says from your article yesterday. The ongoing chaos of this pandemic only underlines why the world needs an ironclad global agreement to set the rule of the game for the pandemic preparedness and response. My question is, how tied are WHO and WEF? Can you guys, Ellie, can you help us on that? And then I'll turn over to you, Senator.
Extremely tight. So the World Economic Forum and the WHO are partners, and many of their organizations that move between the two organizations have financial and social interest in both organizations. So one company, for example, Bill Gates and Melinda Foundation, they do involved projects for the WHO, like their Disease X scenario and CEPI, and they also fund enormous projects over for the World Economic Forum. So they cross over. And what's happened when you've got these independent businesses operating in both spheres is that they've actually made projects that cross both spheres. So we have, for example, the digital identity, the global digital identity thing, which has been signed up to by most of the same countries who signed the WHO Pact, including, for example, Canada, where they've already started implementing it. Part of that is a compulsory health pass. So not only do you have a globalized digital identity, but they made sure that when the World Economic Forum drew up the digital identity, they included this health pass so that the WHO, in their treaty, which is what they've written, they can use this mandatory health pass digital ID to enforce their pandemic tracking and surveillance. So those two things are dependent upon each other. They are linked. And there's hundreds of examples like that, but that's just an easy one to pull out for what we're talking about today. And I will say one thing about the WHO. If an organization fails in its primary function, which is to prevent and investigate a pandemic, which the WHO failed in, then you do not throw more money at it, and you certainly don't give that organization more power. You go and investigate why that organization failed in its task. And so what we should be doing is, instead of signing a WHO treaty, Scott Morrison should be pulling the WHO up and saying, why would we give you a second more of our time when you protected China from what they did? You have not punished China for anything. There's been no real investigation to stopping this happening again, which means not locking countries down. It means investigating these labs to make sure that these scientists and these governments are not engaging in research they shouldn't be. Why are we giving the WHO any time at all when they've been wrong on almost everything they've asked us to do? They lied. They gave us bad advice. They changed their advice without explanation. And they leaned on social media giants to create these safety protocols to make sure that not only were people locked in their homes, but they were not allowed to speak to each other via social media. What happened to the world was a disgrace.
Wow. Senator?
Yes. First of all, they're very closely aligned. They're driven by the same globalist agenda. They're driven by the same globalist predators that control them. And they're just foot soldiers for these globalist predators. Now, some of their language is identical. The Great Reset, the New World Order, the Build Back Better. Not only is it identical between the two of them, it is used frequently by their disciples. Canada's Trudeau, France's Macron, New Zealand's Ardern, Boris Johnson in the UK, Merkel in Germany, Morrison in Australia, Morrison and Joyce in Australia. They're colluding the whole time, and they're after control of all aspects of our society. I just made some notes. The food of our society, what we eat, when we eat it, how much we get. They are saying this, Pat. It's not my words. They are saying this. Digital identity to control every aspect of our life, including eventually get us onto a social credit system and a living wage where they control how much we have through a cryptocurrency that comes in when they ban cash. Control our property rights. They're already doing that. They're controlling energy. They're controlling water. They're controlling policies that drive these things. And Morrison today, Scott Morrison, did Alexandra talk about her tweet that she put out exposing Scott Morrison's lying?
No, not yet.
Okay. Well, let me I'll ask Alexandra to do that because I've retweeted it. I'll get Alex to do it. Now, Morrison has been repeatedly lying about the injection mandates. There are no vaccine mandates in our country, says Morrison. He funded them, he enabled them, he drove them.
Absolutely.
We've had that discussion in the past. But what's more significant, Pat, and this mirrors the experience of the past, Liberal, Labor, Nationals, Greens. Not once do they talk about the destruction of our sovereignty, the ceding of our sovereignty, the destruction of governance at the hands of the UN. And let's face it, it's not the UN that does that. It's our political leaders that don't have the guts to stop them. And they adopt these policies. Not once have they ever put these out. They've denied them. Pauline Hanson discussed Agenda 21 back in 1996. I've been talking about it since I first got in, before I got into the Senate. It exists. It's real. I've got the evidence to prove it. At first they denied it. Then they said, yeah, but it's not mandatory. Rubbish. It is mandatory once they legislate. But not once in this election issue, until I made it an issue last Friday, has Scott Morrison and Anthony Albanese talked about this. Not once. And yet it's heinous control over us. And the people deserve to know. These people, Morrison and Albanese, Tweedledum and Tweedledummer, are pushing this stuff just as their predecessors, John Howard, John Anderson, Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard have done, Paul Keating, Bob Hawke, just as they have done, Whitlam, Fraser. They have all been pushing it. We need to get out of the UN. I called for it in my first Senate speech. Oz, exit out of the UN. We've got to start running our country for Australians. And something more insidious, Pat, is the fact the UN and the WEF promote interdependency. Now that sounds wonderful, Pat. We'll all be interdependent and sing Kumbaya. But what actually that means is that we are dependent on other countries, which makes us dependent. We used to be independent. We had our own destiny. We could shape our own laws. We could shape our own lifestyles. We could shape our own future. No more. Not for since 1975 in particular. We are now puppets. Now what they want to do is they want to make us absolutely, completely controlled by WEF and UN. They're both the same front, two different fronts for the same agenda for the globalist predators.
Well, Senator, thank you, and thank you to Pauline and One Nation for what you're doing for the country. I trust Pauline is feeling a lot better. I know she was pretty quick at the beginning of the week, and we'll be praying for you for Saturday. I'm just going to go back to Ellie and say, I know you're busy, Senator, out there campaigning, and you have our support. Get out there, get out in those polling booths. If if people like One Nation need help or UAP, get out there, support these people, because we can't just be posting on social media. We need to rally as an army and get out there handing out pamphlets and talking to people. So, Senator, thank you so much for what you're doing for the country. You're a great Australian and a great leader, and we honour you. And I look forward to having you over at dinner again. Promise I'll cook better next time.
I look forward to that, and look after Alexandra, because she's one of the best journalists in the country. She speaks her mind.
That she is. Now, Ellie, just on that, this tweet that you did, talk to us about it.
Well, if it's the one I think it is, basically Scott Morrison pulled a real Swiftie yesterday. It became pretty obvious when my tweet went viral that this was not an issue that was known by most people, and that the majority of Australians, whether they're Liberal or Labor, whether they wore masks or they didn't wear masks, they are not keen on the idea of a bureaucracy like the WHO controlling their health decisions. They don't want to have basically a Daniel Andrews, but in Geneva. They don't want that. No one wants that. And so it went viral, and it went from being maybe put the majors last to no, the majors are going dead last.
Dead last.
Happening. And so what he did was he said that my article was rubbish. He can say what he likes, that's fine. But the sneaky thing he did was that he said he wouldn't sign up to a treaty like that would contain stuff like that. So he denied that the treaty on the table contains these sovereign risks. And the implication was to the casual viewer that he wasn't going to sign this treaty. No, Scott Morrison refused to say that he wouldn't sign this treaty. He fully intends to sign this particular treaty. He was denying that our claims about the treaty were true. Now he can go and if he said he read it and that it didn't contain it, then he did not read it or he did not understand it, because it's pretty clear. It's in black and white. The whole world's press is talking about this because the human rights organizations across the world have red flagged this treaty as a violation of individual rights. So for Scott Morrison to pretend that the treaty isn't what we said it was in our article is ridiculous. And it was a case of him hoping that the casual listener would hear him say, I'm not going to, without actually hearing, the detail that he was going to sign the treaty. and that's what he managed to do. So I put out another tweet this morning trying to clarify what he actually did, because he did fool quite a few people. And look, if you're interested in more journalism and more, please subscribe to The Spectator. We have 10 issues for $1 on at the moment, so it's the perfect time to join us and to follow some real news, because no one else is going to tell you. And 2GB did absolutely no journalistic work. They didn't ask Scott Morrison a single question. They gave him an opening line and then chuckled along with the Prime Minister. That's the quality of your press. An interviewer who just laughs away your sovereignty without a single follow-up question.
Now, I want to speak to all the subscribers here, all of our followers, and I need you to listen to me very carefully about what I'm going to say. I want every single one of you, I'm asking every single one of you, to get behind Ellie and Spectator magazine. Listen, I don't do promotions for other people on this thing, apart from Ellie and maybe James and a few others. This is your voice, and this is your news media. It's the voice of the people, because they're writing what you're thinking, what you're feeling. Now, I know they've got a special on where you get 10 articles for $1. I'd be signing up $10 and getting 100 articles. And I'll tell you why. You've got to be informed. Ellie and the writers of Spectator, James and Ron and all the others, are great supporters of our freedoms. Now, there is a link that we're going to put in the chat and up here on the screen. I want all of you, listen, once this is over, we've got a few more minutes here, get on board. Our education is important. There's a lot of stuff out there that's not true, and it damages us. But when you've got people with the guts, and dare I say, the gonads of Ellie and James and the like, we need to be informed. And so could you please get out there, every one of you, get on board with Spectator. And by the way, no, I'm not funded by Spectator magazine, and they're not paying for this advertisement. These are friends of mine. I'm not paying for...
We particularly go out and we seek out people in the areas who speak for your freedoms, who work in these professions, who are doctors, who are philanthropists, who know what these industries are like, and who are speaking against what is happening. And there are so few of them. You know, we find handfuls of people who are terrified to speak because they've been bullied and cajoled and coerced by mainstream media. And we try and give them a voice, because you deserve to hear the truth of what's happening. And almost no one will publish it, because they don't want you. They don't want you to hear anything that contradicts the narrative. And as we head towards this, World Health scenario, you can bet your sweet life that they're going to lean on social media companies to make sure that no one's allowed to publish or speak about these things, because it'll be a risk to public health, or whatever the WHO wants to call it. So please support your writers who are trying to help you and support you.
Yeah, and look, for $1, seriously, come on, guys. It's come on. If you can't afford $1, you really need, I don't know, whatever. But look, Ellie, where can we follow you on Twitter? That's your favorite platform. Where do we follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, apparently from Twitter I can make the Prime Minister give a press conference. So
love it. I love it.
You obviously read me at The Spectator. I also write for the Vegas Take, and I write for Good Source. And I'll be doing election night coverage from both Good Source and Discernible. So you can look out for me there if you're bored of the mainstream coverage.
Dave Pellas does a great job there with Good Source. Okay, so guys, get up now. Where do we find you? How can we subscribe to Spectator? How can we get those articles?
If you just go to the webpage, there's subscribe buttons everywhere. You'll see them. The Twitter account and Facebook account both have ads pinned, which link you straight to the subscriber account. So it's easy. You'll see a big blue banner, and you click on that, and it's just a couple of clicks and you're subscribed. All
right. Now, my team's going to put that in there as well. So we'll get that on. Ellie, I want to have a few last words from you. For those of you that are with us Sunday morning post-election, I've got a message on Reborn that's going to be an absolute paint peeler. And also, yesterday, we had our financial freedom event that went literally ballistic. We couldn't cope with the amount of people that got on. And so a lot of people missed out. I'm running an encore this Saturday, yes, on election day. And it'll go from 11 a.m. till around about 12:45. If you've not registered for that, you've got to get on board. And I know some of you are freaked out about crypto and banking and all this, but But, at the end of the day, you've got to control. And we deal with these issues and we speak about them, okay? So we speak about these fears and we also speak about you getting yourself financially secure. Remember, if you give them the power to feed you, you give them the power to starve you. So I'm going to ask my team to put that link in the chat. I'll also give it there a couple of times. Now, later on, we'll place it in there. And I know that my team's got up there to put up there. So two things, beware of a couple of things. Number one, follow us on Instagram. Chris from my team will put that link up there. Sign up for Saturday's event. It's going to be absolutely powerful. Follow Ellie and anyone that asks you to join a Telegram group. They are robots. They are spammers. They're illegals on my platform. And I'm getting a lot of them. I'm getting sick and tired of them. So just block, delete, and report them. It is not me. Ellie, Saturday's election. It's a big day. I'm concerned. Matter of fact, I'm heartbroken, actually. Because either way we're going, Albo, if the guy doesn't have 666 written all over his head, I'm a monkey's uncle, and we'll leave that alone. And ScoMo, I just don't trust the man anymore. What's your advice?
The only way that you can protect yourselves is to take out insurance this election. And that is to put minor parties in the Senate so they cannot push through all of these terrible policies. Like we are currently, One Nation is trying to stop the digital identity bill from going through. They need more independent senators in there from the freedom-friendly parties to stop the government pushing that through. And so if you can't vote for one of the minor parties locally, at least put them in the Senate. And as for all of these, the left, we've got a big problem in this country, and that's that we took our eyes off the education system. And so instead of the children growing up being, kind of a little bit left, maybe a bit right, we've got an entire 2 generations now that are hard left eco-fascists. They were indoctrinated into a kind of socialist environmentalism that is terrifying. So they've come out, not just Labor voters, they are Greens and Teal voters. And they're all reaching the age now where they're going to be voting in this election. And if you follow the vote, you're going to see that they're going to start electing a lot of these billionaire-backed fringe left parties who want nothing more than to destroy your energy infrastructure.
Explain that. Ellie, explain that, because people think these independents, these Homes of Court Climate Change 2000, like Zelga, whatever her name is down there, and all that lady in Kooyong, warn people about, I'm not telling you to warn them, but expose, these people are faking. They're not independents at all. They're not, are they, really?
They have the same financial backer. They have the same campaigns. They have the same policies. They are funded by the same person, and they are there for one thing only, and that is to push through climate policy that will benefit they call them carbon capture and renewables technologies, but it basically means they're going to enslave your power grid to China and to throw billions of your dollars at these foreign businesses so that they can make money. They're not going to save the planet. They're going to make money for their mates. And that's what they're there for. And also they want to raise taxes so that the government can take more of your money to give to more of their mates. And that's what this whole eco-fascist thing is really about. It's a redistribution of wealth under the banner of climate. And it doesn't benefit anybody except a few billionaires. So Teals are worse than Greens. Greens are worse than Labor. Labor is worse than Liberal, but by gosh, all 4 of them are pretty shonky. So you need to find a way to put that. We call them the freedom-friendly parties because they're the only parties out there that value your liberty and that want to reduce your taxes and give you some kind of control back over your life so that you can get out of this pandemic mess and those 2 years of hell that those people in power put you through unnecessarily.
Now, Ellie, Little Bird told me that you have another article coming out today.
It won't be today. It'll be tomorrow because...
even better. Gives everyone a chance to go over. Don't tell them anymore. Gives everyone a chance to go over and register to Spectator magazine.
Look, go register because you should read the articles I've already written there.
Absolutely.
And tomorrow morning there will be a great article there for you as well. And just so your readers know, the only reason I'm not there today is because I haven't been to bed. I went on GB News this morning at 4:30 to discuss the same issue, and I'm about to hop in a car. So
Thank you,
it's
Ellie. Thanks for what
physically
you're doing.
near a keyboard, but we're going to do a massive deconstruction of this ScoMo's little fabrication in his interview and ask him some real questions that 2GB should have asked him but didn't.
Yep. One of my goals one day is to get Rowan on one of these programs. I'll leave that with you. Alexandra, thank you so much. God bless you. And thanks for all you're doing for the country. Now, folks, Saturday is a big day. And we're grateful for Ellie. I want to encourage you to get over to Spectator magazine. Just remember, I'm not doing any rants tomorrow. We're going to be there on Sunday. Majors last. Greens, Labor, Liberal, dead last. People like United Australia Party, great party. People like One Nation. People like IMOP. People like GAP. Put them first. Put them first. Get your first Freedom Party, your preferred one, put them number one, and then put the others. But as far as Labor, Greens, and Liberals, dead last. Now remember, you've got to, the green form, you've got to fill in all those numbers. The big form, you've got to have at least 6. Use a pen if you have one. I'd encourage you to use a pen, please. And also, just a reminder, Saturday, I'll ask my team to put the link in here. It's a big day. Yesterday, I couldn't tell you how we got so slammed with people yesterday. And just as a testimonial, one of the people I know that gave a testimonial literally set himself up for life financially in just a matter of 3 months. And if you don't want to be on that, that's fine. You don't need to be on. I'm just offering it there to you. And please don't get things like crypto confused with the, cashless society. It's a completely different thing. And I'm not going to get into a debate of that. If you want to debate that, go on someone else's platform. I'm not interested in debating nonsense like that. Also on Tuesday, ladies and men, on Tuesday, I'm bringing the big gun out. I'm bringing my wife on Facebook. She's got something exciting to talk to you about. That'll be Tuesday. Anyway, we're believing for a turn. Father, we pray for this election on Saturday. Lord, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And we ask your will be done. We ask you to protect our nation. We ask you to bless these freedom parties. Give them a miracle. Lord, we know we're in a David and Goliath battle here, but we know that the battle belongs to the Lord. And Lord, we thank you in Jesus' name. So, folks, join us on Saturday. The link is there. Tuesday, I'm going to be interviewing my wife. That's going to be interesting. And also, Election Day. Make sure, remember, major parties last, freedom parties always first. And we'll see you on Saturday on the webinar. God bless you. And thank you to all the boys at Dan Good Productions and to all my team out there working, and to Alexandra and also to Senator Malcolm Roberts. Hey, listen. Don't just hold this message. Can I ask you to share the daylights out of it? Every one of you that watches, don't just view, share. Come on, let's get this thing up to thousands. We've got till Saturday to warn people. Come on. We've got to be watchmen and warn people what's really going on. So share it. Hey, I'm happy to deal with the trolls and the abuse that I get from people that get these things. That's okay. God gave me big shoulders. God bless you and thank you, everybody.